She stood frozen in the marble entryway, 2 suitcases at her feet, eyes wide as they traced the skyline from my penthouse windows. "Is all this yours?" she whispered. The same woman who once told me I'd never be more than a waitress. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. The heat from the fryers clung to my skin like guilt, and the cracked tile beneath my sneakers made a sticky sound with every step. Grease-slicked air curled around my ponytail as my mom's voice sliced through the clatter of dishes and the low hum of the kitchen's fan. "You better get used to holding a tray, Melissa. That's all you'll ever be good at." She said it without venom. That's what stung the most. There was no frustration in her tone, no moment of parental concern veiled as discipline. It was flat, final, delivered with the same bored efficiency she used to confirm dental appointments at her front desk job, another entry in her mental ledger of my failings. I stood there, apron stained, arms aching from an 8-hour shift, while she stared at me with that same expression she wore every Sunday across the dinner table. Disappointment dressed up as authority. She was 44, but she wore her resentment like a youth serum. Dyed auburn hair always perfect, lips painted with just enough gloss to seem presentable, but never warm. My mother believed that suffering made her superior, that surviving a miserable marriage and a job she hated gave her license to label anyone not clawing through the same mud as lazy. To her, Ryan, my older brother, was the prototype of success. Tall, clean-shaven, enrolled in law school on a partial scholarship. He spoke in full paragraphs, loved quoting case law at the table, and never once looked up from his phone when I spoke. And why would he? I was the dropout, the waitress, the distraction. What no one saw, not him, not her, were the nights I spent hunched over my sketch pad at 3 a.m., eyes bloodshot from screen glare, fingers smudged with graphite and cheap ink. Between double shifts at the diner and the silence at home, I buried myself in textiles, color palettes, and mock-up storefronts. I scavenged free design classes online like they were breadcrumbs to a life beyond service trays and snide remarks. At dinner, I tested the waters once. "I've been working on launching a boutique." Her laugh cut through the air before the sentence ended. "Melissa, you can't even keep your lights on." She wasn't lying. I'd sold my comforter to cover last month's electric bill, but what she didn't understand, what none of them did, was that I wasn't building comfort. I was building leverage, and I wasn't planning on staying broke forever. Not with the things I knew. Not with the fire she'd lit in me that day, when she said I'd never be more than a girl in an apron. I wasn't special. Not yet. But I would be. The walls of my apartment were thin. I could hear the upstairs couple fighting about money most nights. But within that cramped space, something quiet and deliberate was unfolding. I'd pushed my mattress against the far wall to make room for bolts of fabric. My desk doubled as a sewing station. My closet became a stockroom. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't Instagram-worthy. But it was mine. The loungewear wasn't flashy. That wasn't the point. It was soft, tailored, and built for women who didn't want to apologize for being tired. Wide-neck sweatshirts that hugged the collarbone. Elastic waist pants that didn't cut into the skin. Neutral tones that looked intentional, not lazy. I poured every emotion I'd swallowed into every seam. The sting of dismissal, the weight of invisibility, the ache of wanting to feel seen but not judged. My first few sales came from Etsy, buried beneath listings for mass-manufactured leggings and novelty tees. But I wrote every product description myself, carefully, honestly, for when you need to feel human again. That line sat beneath a dusty rose hoodie. It resonated, more than I expected. Jada came through like a miracle. She worked late nights as a marketing intern for a clean beauty startup, and one night over boba, she said, "You have something real. Let me help." She reached out to a micro-influencer who'd once reviewed their vitamin C serum. The woman had 14K followers and a loyal niche audience. When she posted a reel in my set, laughing, hair undone, no filters, I was eating cold noodles in front of my laptop. 10 minutes later, I heard the Shopify chime. Then again, and again. Then my inbox froze. Then the dashboard. The site crashed under the weight of something I didn't yet believe was real. I spent the next 72 hours answering emails, sewing, boxing, begging USPS clerks to let me drop off late. My eyes burned. My back throbbed. But the exhaustion felt different this time. Purposeful. I hired my first employee a month later, a second 2 months after that. I upgraded to a larger space. A friend of Jada's referred me to a consultant who fixed my back-end infrastructure and tripled our conversion rate. By 24, I had an LLC, a fulfillment team, and grossed more that quarter than my mother had in the last 2 fiscal years combined. Still, I said nothing to her. Not out of bitterness, but because I owed her nothing. She was still under the impression I spent evenings balancing water pitchers and taking tips from rude couples in booths. That Thanksgiving, when she told me it was nice to see me maturing, something inside me finally snapped loose, not in anger, not even in sadness, in freedom. Because for the first time, I saw her for what she truly was, irrelevant to who I'd become. The call came on a Tuesday, casual in its timing, heavy in its subtext. I recognized her number instantly, but I let it ring twice before answering. A silence bloomed on the other end before she spoke, clipped and cautious, the words wearing unfamiliar humility. "Melissa, I heard you're doing okay now." I stood barefoot in my kitchen, a space flooded with soft morning light, the espresso machine humming low behind me. My marble countertops gleamed. The scent of fresh eucalyptus drifted from a vase Jada had sent over the week before. I didn't respond immediately. I let the moment stretch, let the reality of it seep into the silence. She asked to stay, just until she figured things out. The voice that had once cracked like a whip across my confidence now trembled with restraint. No apologies, no acknowledgement. Just the assumption that, despite everything, I'd make room. When she showed up 3 days later, she wore the same beige trench coat she always wore when she wanted to look expensive. 2 wheeled suitcases trailed behind her like evidence of a life hastily undone. Her eyes scanned the lobby, the high ceilings, the concierge desk, the doorman who greeted her by name because I had prepped them. Her smile was thin, practiced, defensive. I opened the door to my penthouse with the same calm I once lacked at 17 when she accused me of being too sensitive. This time, I wasn't sensitive. I was steel-wrapped in silk. Her eyes flicked up to the 20-foot ceilings, then to the floor-to-ceiling windows that spilled over Central Park. She blinked at the minimalist art I'd curated myself, the matte black fixtures, the hand-woven throw folded neatly on the Italian leather sectional. She didn't hide her awe. She didn't try to. "Is all this yours?" I watched her take it in, not just the space, but what it represented. The independence, the permanence, the success she never thought I was capable of. "Every inch," I said, my voice low, even. She didn't speak. Her mouth opened slightly, as if there were something she wanted to say but couldn't find a version of it that wouldn't make her small. That pause, that hesitation from the woman who once dictated my worth like gospel, was the beginning of a reckoning I hadn't planned for but welcomed nonetheless. She had walked into a life she believed could never be mine, and for the first time, she had no script. She set her fork down with that familiar clink, the same sound I remembered from countless dinners growing up, when silence was sharp and praise was rationed. Across the table, she swirled her wine and leaned in like a mentor imparting wisdom to a trainee, unaware that the roles had long since reversed. "You know," she said, eyes scanning the view behind me instead of meeting mine, "you should think about diversifying. You don't want to rely on one thing. I've seen it happen. People get too comfortable and then poof." I nodded once, slowly, like I was absorbing a revelation. In truth, my mind had drifted back to the team call I'd had just that morning, finalizing logistics for our European distribution launch, syncing timelines for warehouse rollouts in Berlin and Amsterdam. My financial advisor had sent a casual note that afternoon. "Your quarterly passive income just cleared 6 figures. No surprises, just another Tuesday." Still, I let her speak. She went on about how she always knew I had a creative streak, how I just needed structure, how maybe she had been too hard on me, but only because I saw your potential. Every sentence was dressed in hindsight. Every compliment dipped in self-preservation. She didn't remember the sting of her words when I was 19 and still clutching a food tray. Or worse, she remembered and didn't care. Then came the moment she'd built the entire conversation toward, cloaked in casual tones but dense with implication. "So, how long can I stay?" I looked at her. Really looked. The woman who once smirked when I said I wanted to create something of my own. Who measured my value in hourly wages and tips. Who told her friends I was still figuring things out, well into my mid-20s. And now she sat in a penthouse she didn't believe I could ever afford, eating from plates she wouldn't have let me touch as a kid, waiting for the grace of permanence. "You can stay 2 weeks," I said evenly. "I'll cover groceries. After that, I think it's time you earned your place." She blinked. Her mouth opened, a rebuttal half-formed, but then closed again. No argument, just a small nod, brittle and silent. She never stayed past the 14th day. Now, when I pass that front door, when the light spills through and catches the gold in the marble floors just right, I smile, not with bitterness, not with triumph, but with clarity. Because I'm not her waitress anymore. I'm the one who signs the checks.